In the heart of South London, surrounded by the ceaseless energy of a modern metropolis, stands a monument to a different time. Its high brick walls and stern gatehouse are a stark anachronistic presence, a fortress of Victorian severity embedded in the fabric of a 21st century city. This is His Majesty's Prison, Brixton. From its very inception, it was a structure built with a specific purpose for a specific era. But time is relentless, and the demands of society evolve in ways its original architects could never have foreseen. This prison was never designed to cope with modern demand. Its story is one of constant adaptation, of a struggle to reconcile a rigid, aging infrastructure with the complex and ever-growing pressures of the contemporary justice system. It is a physical record of changing philosophies in punishment, rehabilitation, and the very definition of humane containment. The building itself seems to hold the memory of every soul that has passed through its gates, a silent witness to 2 centuries of confinement. Brixton Prison opened in South London in 1819, but its original name was the Surrey House of Correction. It was built to address what was seen as a rising tide of petty crime and vagrancy in the county. Its purpose was not merely to warehouse offenders, but to reform them through a strict regimen of hard labour and religious instruction. The chosen instrument for this reformation was the treadmill, a brutal and monotonous device designed to crush the spirit as much as to tire the body. Inmates would spend hours climbing its endless steps, grinding corn or pumping water, their labour generating power for the prison, but offering no skill or purpose to the individual. The architectural philosophy of the time was one of control and surveillance, and Brixton was a product of this thinking. Its layout was intended to intimidate, to remind the inmate of their constant observation and the futility of resistance. The very bricks and mortar were imbued with a sense of unyielding authority, a physical manifestation of the state's power over the individual. Built in the Victorian era, it became known for harsh conditions and strict discipline. The prevailing penal philosophy was the separate system, which aimed to prevent the moral contamination of prisoners by enforcing total isolation. Inmates were confined to their cells for up to 23 hours a day. When allowed out for exercise or to attend chapel, they were forced to wear masks or hoods, their faces hidden from one another. Silence was absolute and brutally enforced. A dropped spoon, a cough, a whispered word, any could result in severe punishment, from the withdrawal of food rations to solitary confinement in a darkened cell. This system, intended to encourage penitent self-reflection, often led to madness. The psychological toll of such profound isolation was immense, a form of torture that left no physical marks. The conditions were Spartan, the food meagre, and the sanitation primitive. Brixton was a machine for correction, and its components were human beings, subjected to a process designed to break them down and remold them into compliant citizens. As the 19th century gave way to the 20th, Brixton's role began to shift. It was converted into a local prison, primarily holding men on remand, those awaiting trial and not yet convicted of a crime. This fundamental change in its population brought new challenges. The Victorian infrastructure, designed for a silent, separate system, was ill-suited to the dynamic and transient nature of a remand population. The prison, originally built on the outskirts of London, was now engulfed by the sprawling city. The population it served grew exponentially. Over time, overcrowding became the defining crisis, placing severe and unceasing pressure on staff and inmates alike. The prison's certified normal accommodation, the number of prisoners it was designed to hold safely, was consistently and dramatically exceeded. This wasn't a temporary surge, it was a chronic state of being. Every resource was stretched to its breaking point: the kitchens, the healthcare facilities, the workshops, and most critically, the staff. For officers, managing a dangerously overcrowded wing became a daily exercise in crisis management, their focus shifting from rehabilitation to simple containment and survival. For inmates, the lack of space meant a loss of privacy, increased tension, and a constant grinding friction that could erupt into violence at any moment. In this environment of decay and pressure, the prison faced repeated and damning criticism over safety, hygiene, and mental health care. Reports from Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Prisons throughout the late 20th and early 21st centuries painted a grim, consistent picture. They spoke of vermin, of dilapidated sanitation, of cells where mould crept up the walls. The very air in some parts of the prison was described as foul, a testament to failing plumbing and inadequate ventilation in a building never meant to house so many. Safety became a paramount concern. The high levels of stress, boredom, and hopelessness among the inmate population, many of whom were grappling with the uncertainty of their upcoming trials, created a volatile mix. Incidents of self-harm and suicide were tragically high. The provision of mental health care, though staffed by dedicated professionals, was consistently overwhelmed. Identifying and supporting the most vulnerable individuals in such a crowded and chaotic setting was a near impossible task. The building itself seemed to conspire against wellness, its oppressive Victorian design exacerbating feelings of despair and claustrophobia. It was a cycle of neglect, where the deteriorating physical environment directly contributed to the deterioration of the mental health of those held within it. The most visceral manifestation of the overcrowding crisis was the practice of doubling up. Cells meant for one often held 2 or more prisoners. These spaces, designed in the 19th century for a single occupant in silent isolation, were now forced to accommodate 2 men, their beds, and all their worldly possessions. The total floor space was barely a few square meters. Within this tiny area, 2 strangers had to eat, sleep, and live their lives. The toilet, often unscreened, was just feet from their beds. This lack of basic privacy and dignity was a constant source of degradation. It stripped away a fundamental element of humanity, reducing life to a crude, public existence. Every moment was shared, every sound was heard, every smell was unavoidable. For men awaiting trial, presumed innocent, this was their daily reality. The psychological impact of such forced intimacy cannot be overstated. It created an environment ripe for conflict, where minor disagreements could quickly escalate. It also fostered a sense of profound powerlessness, trapped not only by the prison walls but by the constant presence of another person in a space that offered no escape. In response to decades of critical reports and public pressure, numerous attempts at reform were made. Millions of pounds were invested in refurbishment projects. New wings were built, old sanitation systems were ripped out and replaced, and fresh coats of paint were applied in an attempt to mask the underlying decay. Despite these reforms, Brixton continued to struggle. The core problem remained: the fundamental inadequacy of a Victorian building to meet modern penal standards. Each improvement felt like a temporary patch on a structure that was fundamentally compromised. A new healthcare wing could be opened, but it would still be overwhelmed if the population it served remained dangerously high. New security measures could be installed, but they could not eliminate the tension caused by cramming 2 men into a cell built for 1. The cycle of inspection, criticism, investment, and partial improvement became a familiar rhythm. Each new report would highlight progress in some areas, while noting persistent, deep-rooted failures in others. The prison was trapped in a paradox. It was too historically significant and centrally located to close, yet too old and poorly designed to ever truly be made fit for purpose. Today, HMP Brixton operates as a Category C and D training and resettlement prison. Its role once again transformed. The focus is now on preparing men for release, providing them with skills and support to reintegrate into society. Yet the shadow of its past remains. The building itself is a constant physical constraint on these modern ambitions. It stands as a powerful, living reminder of how old systems built of brick and iron and outdated ideology strain under the weight of modern realities. It is a testament to the difficulty of pouring new wine into old bottles. The story of Brixton is the story of the British prison system in microcosm, a history of noble intentions, brutal realities, and the perpetual, difficult struggle to balance punishment with humanity. Its walls have absorbed the echoes of 200 years of justice, injustice, despair, and hope, and as the City of London continues to evolve around it, the old prison on Jebb Avenue remains a silent, brooding question mark about what we expect from our prisons, and what they, in turn, can ever realistically deliver. If this history compelled you, subscribe to Unknown Record for more untold London stories and deeper dives.